Alright everyone, a bunch of greedy corporate pigs are trying to destroy the Internet Archive, which I use personally in a lot of my work. See, what I do is I find old, out-of-copyright PDF files, usually, digital editions. Some of it's been from my own collection, some of it's paperback related, and you transcribe it. Digital editions are easier because then it's all in one place. I've got hundreds of these files, like currently in backup. I've worked, though, with hundreds more, and now I have to re-download them all, because what happened, long story short, is that the Internet Archive supplies, it has digital licenses to lend certain in-copyright ebooks. What you do is you buy a license and you can lend it out. So one person at a time can use it. You can lend it out to multiple people, but not at the same time. The Internet Archive decided to suspend that practice and simply allow universal lending for certain academic texts during the coronavirus moral panic that we just went through, in order to ensure the continuity of the educational system for people who would need copies. They can't get it from the library's closed, they don't have the physical edition, Amazon shipping time is 2 months, so they can't get it online. They're fucked unless they have access to an ebook edition here and now. So they decided to allow limitless lending. They did what was right. They probably helped tens, hundreds of thousands of students by adopting this policy. Whoops, now the pulp publishers with academic ties are suing them. And of course, they've got deep pockets. The Internet Archive does not have the ability to pay the exorbitant amount that they're trying to charge them, which is in the hundreds of millions of dollars, by the way, which is, no court would ever give them that amount, but it'd be a significant amount. The whole goal, they're going to try to destroy the Internet Archive, which has become it's a thorn in the side of the legacy media. People archive stuff and remove their clickbait. I've been encouraging people for 2 years to do that. It's a great way to fuck the legacy media. It's a great way to fact check them. It's a great way to archive politically relevant material and historical material for posterity. And it's especially a very good way of storing digital documents. This is the main repository of books that I work from. Again, I've got plenty of files. I could edit for 2 or 3 more years just based on the ones I've already got downloaded. Now I want to go back through, and I'm going to go through all of my source lists, because I have various sources to find works to actually edit from. So bibliographic entries, books of books, so to speak, certain digital entries and so forth, lists of different authors. I've got my sources. I'm going to have to go through now and probably download 2,000-3,000 new ones, because if the Internet Archive goes kablooey, I still want to have those texts because I want to slowly edit them all. I don't want to have to stop editing because I run out of material because a bunch of greedy corporate pigs decided to sue an archival repository over a few ebook copies that aren't even physical things. They're under a copyrighted lending license, but that doesn't make it a physical object. See, the whole idea is that the ebook, for rental purposes, for lending purposes, legally and technologically is artificially considered a single discrete thing. Well, it's not the case. The file can be lent to 1,000 people at the same time as long as they have the technology to read it. That's the long and short of it. But for legal purposes, it's considered a single entity. They decided to suspend this out of care for the educational institution. Now, if you want to help the Internet Archive, I'll tell you how to do that. Because some people are like, well, we'll move it to the blockchain, which you're not going to be able to do. That's too much material there. You're talking about a massive amount of material. There's no way for you to transfer it before the archive potentially goes kablooey. So that's definitely, you can definitely create local archives. I'm definitely going to be doing that. I've just bought a new USB drive solely for the purpose. I'm going to get like a magnetic tape drive or something at some point, something of long-term stable storage. Now, because this is part of my career and not the smallest part either. That being said, some people are saying, well, we'll raise money, we'll fight this case. The problem is that the archive site will probably lose. Technically speaking, they violated these copyright terms in allowing limitless lending. It's just a matter of how much they have to pay. But I think that these companies are going to try to drag it out to exhaust their funds to force a settlement. Oh, the archive probably can't weather the kind of settlement. You're probably talking about tens of millions of dollars in a settlement. Do they have that kind of resources, and or is it likely that they'll be able to acquire those resources from the very small group of people who I think at this point would be capable of lending a significant amount to them? Unfortunately, I think it's a long shot. So here's the only possibility. Say that you're going to boycott the publishers. Threaten them with a boycott. Get together, the liberals should be on board too, because this goes beyond digital book burning. This archive helps, people who are liberal as well. with specifically very academic material, academic textbooks, academic papers, historical first sort of primary source documents. All that goes bye-bye, along with years and years and years of website archives as well that have archived literally large swaths of the entire internet. And essentially, the only way to combat this is to try to force the publishers to back down. You need to shame them publicly. Shame them for essentially insinuating that a site that helped to promote education and probably, again, help tens or hundreds of thousands of people acquire course materials that they couldn't otherwise potentially acquire because there was no way for them to actually get it physically, because you get a limited number of ebook licenses, shipping times and delivery times are extremely long. A lot of people would have gotten screwed if it weren't for this site stepping in and saying, okay, temporarily we're going to be understanding and we're just going to, we'll risk, a lawsuit, which unfortunately is happening, in order to make sure that these students have access to their materials. That's essentially what happened. So go into the link in the description, archived of course, using archive.vn, which by the way Avast falsely lists as a phishing site. That is not true. There's nowhere to actually put personal information in on the site, just so everyone's aware. You should whitelist it on your whatever software you're using if it's catching. I know Kaspersky doesn't filter it, Super Anti-Spyware doesn't grab it. I think it's just Avast. It's a false positive and they need to be challenged now. They tweeted Avast as well and try to get them to fucking take care of their stupid shit. I'm getting more and more pissed off because I guess they were selling user data as well for years. Whoops, China style. But link in the description. Take a look at the publishers, and they have contacts, number one. They have sponsors, potentially, number two. Let's take a leaf out of the social justice warriors' notebooks here and pressure them to back off their lawsuit. It is a frivolous lawsuit. These groups didn't lose a bunch of money because of ebook lending. You didn't lose money. That didn't happen, dude. Don't fucking try to kid me. You have plenty of money. This was for the continuity of the educational system. Why don't you beg the government for a bailout instead? Why don't you get that $100 million or whatever you're begging for, basically? Why don't you get it from Uncle Sam? It's a drop in the bucket. At least it would be for a good purpose. The ebook dispensary act of 2020 to compensate these companies for helping the educational system. Yeah, you could virtue signal. You could help your brands and get free publicity through this, but instead you just want to beat up on the archive site. And the reason why they're doing that is because the archive site is hated by the legacy media. It's hated by lamestream politicians. They've wanted to attack it for years. They've attacked this archival service for platforming hate by allowing the archiving of hateful articles and things of that nature. They've literally made that argument. In fact, archive.org, fairly recently I pointed out, had begun to censor certain entries, to remove entries on a political basis, which I totally disagree with. Apparently it didn't work enough, though. They're still suing them. So yeah, they need to be pressured. You need to grab whatever you want from the archive now, because who knows how long it'll stay active. Who knows how long they're going to stay up? They might just decide to fold tomorrow and say fuck it and not even bother battling in court. They might just say, okay, we'll close down. Well, we're not going to lend anymore. Of course, if I were running their site, I would just remove all of the lending ability. I would just stick to other things that get archived, namely web pages, movies, YouTube videos in some cases, and then the primary source documents that are out of copyright. That's what I would have done. I would have said fuck the educational system and not risked it myself, because maybe I'm not as gregarious as the people that decided to run the archive. That's about all. Peace out.